Hello, this is Michael Hexter, and welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. This episode I'm calling Biden's Recent Climate Moves Don't Fundamentally Challenge Energy/Climate Status Quo. Joe Biden has recently made a couple concessions to the climate movement. I think the direct action of groups like Climate Defiance, New York Communities for Change, just a whole chorus, really, a youth climate movement, activists of various not necessarily organized in groups, have been outraged by or been stunned by or been angered by Biden's continued pro-fossil fuel policies, and also the relative, I don't know if people are evaluating this, but the relative weakness of the Inflation Reduction Act as a climate policy. While it's being touted as the best climate policy we've ever had in the United States, that's an extremely low bar because we really haven't had any. So we're sort of starting with an extremely low bar. So I'm trying to point out here what I think is the political positioning of the Biden administration, or its propensities, and also, unfortunately, and I'll do another video about this, the facilitation by the squad, in particular by AOC, of Biden's relative softness or weakness in the area of climate, despite, again, being the most climate, having done the most for the climate within the capacity of the president that's happened in U.S. history. But that's, again, saying very little. And also we're looking at accelerating climate disasters and heat throughout the world, an enormous. We're in an El Nino now, and we've already seen likely lots of crop destruction. We'll probably be seeing some food shortages, surges in food pricing throughout the next year, and people are going to be hit by all kinds of, have already been hit in different parts of the area and parts of the world, and in parts of the United States by various climate disasters. And the repercussions of those will continue to resonate throughout not just the climate system, but the biosphere more generally. And we inhabit the biosphere, and we live off it. We live off our, food production systems and so forth and so on. And as well as the air and the oxygen created by the lungs of the world, the plant and algae systems in the world. So and anyway, Biden's recent moves. So the two moves I'm talking about are the foundation of a civilian climate corps, which is oriented toward youth employment in various sectors of the economy that are about climate, and the level of funding of that, whether that will be funded adequately. I mean, certainly the idea of training people and having interns or whatever who are doing climate positive things, it's starting really, unfortunately. The original civilian conservation corps, which is modeled on from the 1930s, was a way to employ unemployed people. In this case, so there are some unemployed people, and it's also a good thing to try to get people doing socially beneficial jobs, but we need the commanding heights of the economy to be transformed. And so there are there are already people who would love to do some of these things with or without this climate core. So it depends on how much federal funding, and that is dependent on Congress to pass that kind of funding for actual public sector jobs that are also part of this climate core, doing things that industry will not do. Okay, that doing various either remediation or of various environmental. This could extend into all kinds of environmental work that is not strictly climate, or it could be resilience work related to climate disasters. But all of that needs to become projects. So the idea of a core doing these things, it's like, well, you need to have projects. And so the original CCC in the 1930s had a budget which and it had an enterprise. In other words, it was a form of government entrepreneurship, and so the government was the employer, and was the not only employer but the proposer of projects that were not being funded by the private sector, that were public benefits to in creating various parks and so forth and so on, that were not previously constructed or previously didn't have amenities that allowed people to visit them. So all that kind of thing were part of that the original CCC. So this is not directing the fundamental flows either of energy, in my opinion, without government spending and without laws sort of directing and that spending in particular directions to actually cut emissions, okay, to actually stabilize the climate. So it could be hidden in there somewhere. It could be secreted, so to speak, in the sense of being made hidden in that package. But it is in my opinion what I would call a soft move, and it's and potentially just a feel good move. I'm not saying it couldn't be. It won't be more. It could be made more with teeth in it and also funding in it. And the teeth in part is the public entrepreneurship that needs to happen, where government is deciding this is a climate need that will not be met by a private sector firm, that we need to deploy people, and people would do that public sector work. So that would be a very positive thing in that. But again, the president doesn't have the power of the purse, and so that's a matter of Congress to actually fund it in the multiple billions of dollars, really, to do anything of per year, in the tens of billions of dollars, and then it would be a amazing program, and it could be a good, social experience for young people if they were to be gathered together, or whatever, volunteer, people who would be volunteers or would be paid people to work together on projects of social benefit, be in that case great, but it isn't a decisive move in the area of climate without what I was describing earlier. So the other move is to prohibit drilling and in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. So that's only one portion of federal lands, and it is a sort of a marquee area of environmental concern, because that's the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. But the administration has already approved numbers of fossil fuel projects. In fact, a record number, more than the Trump administration had. So, and is on track to becoming, the U.S. is on track to becoming more of a net exporter of fossil fuels due to this. And this is also a cause in some of celebration, of muted celebration in certain circles, including in the administration. So this is not a decisive move. Neither those two concessions that Biden made to a fundamental move away from fossil fuels, okay, and towards sustainability in the area of energy or land use, and they have the function of being palliatives, of being fobbing off, trying to dismiss or to weaken the case made against Biden for the purposes of basically him running again and not having the climate movement or putting basically green organizations and the climate movement in the sort of camp of saying, well, we can't really be criticizing him that strongly, and is an effort to sort of to court mostly younger voters and to make them feel like, well, he's their man. So or their candidate. But I have come out in a recent episode in saying Biden needs to be challenged, and he needs a challenge. He needs to. There needs to be either Marianne Williamson needs to up her challenge to Biden, and also forcing in a way some form of debate, or forcing the DNC to call debates, or there are other maneuvers that have been suggested by people like Cenk Uygur about that, basically that Biden, that enough people are concerned about Biden. I mean, again, in my video, I talked about his age being not quite, it's a distraction from him and other Democrats being listless campaigners, okay? That is the problem. The Democratic Party are listless, feckless campaigners. They are now banking on, in a way, the judicial process against Trump, which are real and important. They need to happen. Trump almost obviously committed crimes in office there is rampant evidence. I'm not a court, but there's rampant evidence, or a jury, but there's rampant evidence that he did in fact commit all kinds of crimes, and he was the most corrupt and feckless, or feckless is the wrong word, most corrupt and self-dealing president that we've ever had. So, and as well as his family. But the Democrats cannot sit back and allow the courts to try to make up Americans' minds at the voting booth, about who should be the next president. They need to make the affirmative case for their candidate, and they also, I think, they need to run a robust primary, because that's the Democratic thing to do, and also they need to challenge Biden. He said he was going to be a one-term president, and he's decided again not to be that, and he to try to be a two-term president. And he is again, he comes across the ads I get in my feed of him saying, he says, folks, can you contribute to my campaign? I mean, it's so listless. So, now I understand some people find this appealing. He's not a quote unquote a salesman. He's the anti-Trump. And who knows, maybe the subtle appeal, so to speak, of that listlessness will, in comparison to Trump, will win over people, realize, well, he's not, this hyper charlatan that Trump is, and this sociopath. And so, but he has someone who also has a problem with the truth. He lies a lot. He does self-aggrandizing lies. He makes himself out to be a hero in certain circumstances when he has not been a hero. He's not he's not a heroic person. Biden is not. The case for him being a hero is not there, even though his lies in a way are show I think a self-aware, a consciousness, a unconscious awareness that he should be a hero. He's trying to pretend to be a hero. He thought he joined the race in 2019 because he thought he was heroically going to save U.S. democracy. And so he has the thought that he would be a hero, but he doesn't have the bravery to be a hero in many circumstances. And in the area of climate, that seems to be the case. Now he has appointed a group that I'm affiliated with, Climate Defiance, chased down in Climate Week, and I'll put a link in the description to that video, the Undersecretary of the Interior who signed on to the Willow Project, who was here in the New York area for Climate Week, and they confronted him, or our group confronted him about his approval of Willow. But he is also an industry lawyer, so he was an oil and even though quote unquote environmental lawyer. Often there are environmental lawyers who are employed by the extractive industries, and he's one of them. And he was appointed to this by the Biden administration, and so I mean, though Boudreaux is corrupt in and of itself, he was appointed by the Biden team. So there was intention in that. There was an intention not to have it was intention to have a pro-fossil fuel policy. And I think, it may be that Biden sees this as part of the sort of, I think he has a lot of interest in foreign policy, and some of his strengths actually as a president have come in the area of foreign policy, relatively speaking. And I think he thinks of fossil fuels as being an instrument of U.S. foreign policy and maintaining U.S. dominance by keeping other nations dependent on the U.S. through, including Europe, among other places, or at least certainly that's become the case with the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, that the U.S. government sees its a benefit to it being a favored exporter or exporter to Europe of LNG and other fossil fuels. So anyway, liquefied natural gas, LNG. So anyway, so I am urging the climate movement to continue its pressure to get Biden to make more concessions to the climate movement, and not to simply rest on these bones that are being thrown out to the movement, and that these are soft, non-decisive moves to get off fossil fuels, that we are, even though there are moves to energize the market for electric vehicles and so on that come from the Biden administration, that are in fact a bone of contention with the unions, with the UAW and so forth and so on, because electric vehicles are much simpler than internal combustion engine vehicles, and so there's less work involved, less to make them. And some of the suppliers have been non-unionized for the electrical vehicle industry. So, including, and also the biggest EV maker in the United States is not unionized. That's Tesla. So, anyway, there is an effort to, by various forms of suggestion or indirect means, market means, to get people to become somewhat more independent from the use of oil. But it's it's not commensurate with the challenge. And certainly the big demand, declaring a climate emergency, and this is also where we see Joe Biden's unconscious betraying itself. Like he literally he claims to have declared a climate emergency when he hasn't. So, I mean, he imagines that he already has done something that he didn't do, and this is in line with Joe Biden, basically, claiming valor when it isn't his own valor. In other words, he doesn't have the valor to declare the climate emergency, which means confrontation with the Republicans. Republicans have already put out a bill to try to promote, or they are trying to pass a bill in Congress to forbid Biden to declare the climate emergency that he doesn't have the guts to propose, or not only just propose, he can just declare it. But he doesn't want that confrontation and the confrontation with the oil industry, because the climate emergency would make him permitting new oil and gas projects. It wouldn't make sense if you declared a climate emergency. Now he might try to modify that so it means, well, it's a climate emergency, but we will continue to permit new oil and gas projects and coal projects for that, and so. But the climate emergency is a way for the executive branch to use all its powers to deal with the climate as it is and as it's becoming. So anyway, I just wanted to, in this video, to sort of distinguish between what I think are strong climate moves that are within the ambit of the executive branch, and those that are palming them off, or palming off, or attempting to, that's the wrong word, attempting to placate the movement and to create the appearance, to do PR without trying to be all things to all people, as did Obama, or Obama actually less. Obama was 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, 10 years, 12 years ago, that Obama was trying to do some climate stuff. But in any case, the climate has gotten to be a lot worse, in terms of heated and also more climate disasters. So Biden is under pressure, but he's also, as did Obama, he's doing all of the above energy policy, rather than a phase out fossil fuels energy policy. And that's where we need to go. We need a timeline within the context of a climate emergency that something like that is possible. Obviously, a Green New Deal, a substantial, full Green New Deal, I think we're going to come to the point where we need to distinguish between different Green New Deal proposals. Right now, it's all kind of a little bit wishful thinking to think about an actual implemented Green New Deal or future projection of something. But a real substantial, full Green New Deal would require lots of spending and Congress to be on board and so forth and so on. Such a case for it might be made within a climate emergency declaration, and it should be, really. That should be part of the declaration, but not that it could declare the full, but simply that we will prepare a proposal of a Green New Deal that would meet the climate emergency. So it's simply that could be part of such a declaration. But anyway, right now we're still dealing with an administration that is deeply enmeshed with the fossil fuel industry and is unwilling to antagonize them and unwilling to extricate itself from its ties with that industry, and that's a problem. So anyway, please share your thoughts in the comments. Please like the video if you got something out of it. And please subscribe to Politics 2100 for more, for notices of future videos. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.